I'm gonna go live. I think you might want to move the computer over a little bit.
Okay, like that?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live stream, but let me check to make sure that this is actually on right now. Two. Yes, we're on right now.
Okay.
So,
You saw me do my little hand motion there.
yeah. So we're trying to today, like, we're going to talk about a little bit about previous map painting and stuff like that. So today we have with me Jeff Yu.
Hello.
Yay! He's also my boyfriend, so I can bully him into doing stuff for me too. Can you
Uh,
guys hear me? Like, just doing a test. I mean, I think we can definitely be heard on the microphone, but just to make sure in case, hope everybody can hear us. So we're talking about, oh, hi, Haddon, hi, Andre. We're talking about previs stuff today. So just wanted to kind of like talk about some techniques because I'm an animator, but I don't really do a lot of like in-depth painting and matte painting, and Jeff does. So let's take a look about a little bit of Jeff's work. And Jeff, do you want to give us a little bit of information about yourself?
yeah, sure. So I am a visual artist first and foremost. At least that's how I introduce myself. I do a lot of painting, traditional painting. In fact, that's how I started. Started off with sketching, then went on to doing like watercolor, acrylics, oil painting, and then I just discovered this wonderful thing called digital painting, and it's changed my life forever ever since. Uh, One thing I really liked about it is I don't have to use water or all those other traditional mediums, so it's a bit cheaper than having to like constantly repurchase paint, paper, and all that other stuff. But I do like the fact that the skill set that you acquire doing traditional art, though, still carries through.
Yeah.
Like lighting, composition, all that other
So
stuff.
this is his portfolio. So I see you have like some concept art and stuff that
Yep.
you'll also look at all the good stuff. So I see you also do a lot of seems to be very sci-fi focused. Well, for me, like when I initially saw your first portfolio, I was like, wow, this guy really likes a lot of sci-fi. And Jeff didn't even realize that. He was like, oh, like I do a lot of different things. I was like, yeah, but you do a lot of sci-fi too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess the thing is, I really enjoy like robots and like how and anything that's like mechanical, the way they move. It's really fascinating. I like to get into nitty gritty of like how materials work as well too. So and that comes from the fact that I enjoy doing still life back when I was learning traditional art. And when I do my paintings, I try my best not to keep lines in there if possible towards the end, mainly because for me, like I don't see lines in real life in general unless someone actually tries to put it there purposefully. And I feel like having lines is kind of like is a really contrived thing, I guess, in the sense that you have to purposely put it there. And I guess it becomes a bit contradictory since I'm drawing like mechanical stuff, which is human made as well. So it's like trying to paint that realistically too. Like, I don't know. It's yeah.
Yeah. Jeff has a really sometimes he also has like really high concept ideas as well too. So one of the things, Jeff, is do you just make everything up, or like do you do like some research behind this stuff too?
Uh, Both. I would say I do a lot more research than just coming up straight with out of like inspiration, I guess. I tend to believe people are influenced by whatever's around them, and so I've met other artists who say, "Oh, I'm not influenced by anything." I'm like, "So you don't watch movies? You don't read books? You don't pick up like your grocery store, your branded items, and you're not influenced by that either." So I don't know, like maybe some people are just that once in a lifetime genius, but I don't know. For me, I feel most artists are influenced by something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this piece, for example, like I think this one's called a Sun Warrior. What was this piece for, and like how did you come up with the concept of it?
So the Sun Warrior is based on Aztec Mayan influences, and so when I was working at Cool Mini or Not, which is a board game slash card game company, uh, they were creating a miniature line called Dark Age, and so while they were rebranding or not rebranding, they were creating more characters for one of their miniature lines. I was working on this particular character for them called the Sun Warrior, and so when I started on him, I would look up references of Mayan, Aztec sculptures, skull motifs and stuff, and you start seeing like patterns that appear within like certain cultures. Like with Chinese art, for example, maybe that you see a lot of ceramics and a lot of blue and white, or they use a lot of yellow dragons, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
For
Yeah.
those of you that might not know, Jeff has like a book that's like this thick about history of Aztec or Mayan or something.
Mesoamerica.
Mesoamerica.
Yeah,
See, I
yeah.
can't even do that. Yeah, but like for him, like when he's doing all this stuff, like like he's not always making stuff up, right? Like you actually do kind of like some research.
So yeah, I do a good amount, but I also at the end of the day, you still have to do a lot of like refitting yourself because you don't want to just draw exactly what they have there. Like over here in this picture with the ocelots and stuff, right? I could easily draw like another Transformer character or something from I don't know like Megazord or something from Power Rangers, right? But you have to kind of take that idea of like okay, you have segmented armor. How does it move in locomotion? But then you also add okay, now you have stone on it. How would it how would the pieces reticulate on each other? Like a chain link or something. And then in Mayan warriors, they use like a maquito, which is a like wooden paddle with like obsidian on it, and they're like really jagged pieces. And so maybe they have a stone version of the maquito, and it's like attached to this like ocelot character on like the arm, like an arm blade. And so you start creating these different ideas out of like pieces that you found through your research. Yeah.
Yeah, Jules says, oh, she likes this ocelot.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But I think one of the other things too is like because like there's like character stuff as well too, and I think this one is a whole set, right? Like a cool
Kukukani. Yeah.
Kukukani set. So when you're doing something like this, how do you keep it so that they are all different characters, but they look like they're still from the same family?
So there's several things. Part of it is the way you treat the rendering. For this one, because of the more realistic way of how I render it, I have to make sure that when I render, I consider like all the different portions of lighting, right? So when I was taking basic drawing at the school I started off with, like way before SCAD, I learned the 5 different portions of like light. Like you have the highlight, you have the gray or the midtone, you have the umbra or the core shadow or the border between dark and bright. Then you have the reflected light, and then you have the cast shadow. And then if you really want to get technical, you could go on to like 22 other different things. But just to keep it simple, there's like 5 things I usually keep track of when I do this.
Yeah. So like this is definitely when I look at something else, I can't really tell much. It's like, oh, the lighting hits here, that looks good. For someone like me with like who doesn't have as much skills or like is able to tell other stuff, sometimes I use 3D to like mock things up as well too.
I do that too.
Oh, you do that too. Yeah.
A good thing about 3D, and I'm starting to transition to 3D more, is that you're able to keep consistent perspective. And by gosh, like if you're doing human characters, especially like for shortening and stuff like that, like drawing fingers and like toes in like perspective is a nightmare if you don't practice a lot. And like even for me, like drawing hands is still problematic sometimes.
Definitely too.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing about this too is there's characters and there's world building. And there's also vehicles and props because you do a lot of these other things as well too. So when you're drawing something like where do you get your inspiration from? Like how do you decide like because yesterday I was talking to one of my friends and he said that sometimes he gets overwhelmed like oh now that I have to create a character, I have to create a prop, I have to create a world, and he kind of I guess gets like pressured. Like what if I sit down, do I have to create something that everybody will like? How do you get in the mindset of like practicing and feeling like you can just move on and like do stuff like that?
That's a hard question. I mean, some of the projects become very personal, especially when you put time in it and you get vested into it. But I think ultimately it should come down to, are you excited about the project? Because if you don't care about the project, it's going to show up and people will know that you don't care about your project. Yeah. This one over here was for a mod that I was working on called Beyond Skyrim. And so this is with a bunch of other creators all around the world who gather together online in an online community called Dark Creations. And so there was a period of time where I wanted to do something that's more fantasy-based, and I was a huge fan of, I was playing Skyrim during that time period too. So I saw a post on Reddit looking for more artists for this mod they were doing. And so I was like, yeah, sign me up. And so they took a look at my concepts and were like, okay, well, put out some stuff. And so, yeah, I made a turnaround for a Dwarven crossbow based on like Van Helsing type of designs.
3D type of things too.
Yeah.
So we also have somebody who want them to you to kind of look at their portfolio for them.
Sure.
So this I can't pronounce it correctly. I'm gonna butcher it. Busilisiv. Okay. So yeah. So I think they're Russian.
Or Eastern European.
Eastern European probably, but so Busilisiv. Busilisiv said that William. His name is William. Basically.
Okay.
But William says that so to preface things a bit, William says that he wants to update his portfolio website. Some of his better digital work are not currently there, but he receives no directions in formatting. So he also wants some direction on how to format and present his stuff, as well as any feedback on how to improve the quality and things like that. And he says that he wants to find work in character concept art, or storyboarding.
Okay.
So let's take a look at William's stuff.
Okay.
Break it down.
So before I do this, I want to just say that if you're looking for character design art, that's harder to come by versus environment, because when you play games or you do films, usually you have one or two hero asset, for characters, and then a bunch of the other ones are like NPCs. And nowadays with 3D, it becomes easier to just bash together character models and stuff. And you have all these randomizers for NPCs that you can generate. But for environments, every episode maybe they go to a different location. And so there'll be a lot more environment concepts and prop concepts that you'd be doing. So to be able to do that would be very beneficial for your.
So being able to create not just the character, but props and world as well helps to kind of open that up.
Exactly.
So let's take a look at this one. This one is woo! I think for me, off the bat, I noticed that the font is so tiny.
Yeah, that's very hard to read.
Yeah, it's like I like research and information, but that is I need a microscope for that, man.
It could also be the fact that this was probably created for the screen that he was on, but now it's shrunken down right now. So if you open it up or zoom in on it, it might actually be.
Let me try zooming in. But I think one of the things that people need to realize too is what you put on the website. People are not going to always come in, zoom in to try to see all these different things.
That's definitely you gotta actually press.
No. So this seems like it's the quality is kind of low. Description already. So that's number one. Make sure that people can actually read if you're actually putting something up for them to read. Okay. So I think they say raised to be a savior of his people. The Asham, the Egregious failed them when he bonded his body with the well living of the wisdom of the civilization of the world. There's basically a little novel right here already. So it's supposed to be chaotic kind of thing and liberated. Let's talk a little bit about the art.
Well, I do like the fact that he has breakdowns for how the character would move and how some special abilities are activated, triggered, and so on. The top part over here, you have him, with his arm, his cape arms, I guess, coming off the side. Yeah, that's pretty neat too. I think some of the things I'm noticing though is that the rendering is very flat. Even in concept art, even if we're not going to super polished illustration mode yet, you still have to indicate materiality. And if you follow Feng Zhu and Scott Robertson and so on, they're very good at getting spectral lighting and texture to show up on the characters that they paint.
So you mentioned Feng Zhu, FENGZHU.
Yeah, I think he's Singaporean concept artist.
Okay, that's a good resource to have. Yeah, but off the bat, definitely, if you're putting something up, make sure people can actually read it.
Yeah.
Important.
And also, go back.
Yeah.
Another big issue is also color contrast, because right now it's very, very gray. And when you look at just skin tones and so on, even if it's a zombie character, you're still going to see mottled reds and oranges, maybe a little bit of green, some veins might pop through. Those little details will make your character more believable. And then even the lighting itself too. You look at the head. I don't really know where your focus is supposed to be now, because they're all almost the same static lighting. If you were to have the bottom a little bit darker, and then you have maybe even a little bit of gradient, so that maybe the eyes stand out a little bit more. In fact, eyes is probably the best place to put most of your focus on, since that's where we emote with most, and that's also the window to your soul, quote unquote. And since he has the yellow light, you can have that glow going on, and it'll give it even more of a personality.
I'm actually even more interested in his posing on the right side. I think those are more interesting, the morphs and stuff, than the actual middle picture, that he presented as the main one here as well too. Okay, let's take a look at another one first. Go along. Then we also have this. Now this, I think it's the same variation of the character in full body.
Different colors and so on. Yeah, I think your details are really great. I can tell that you have definitely some drawing chops with your line work and all that. I feel like the biggest hurdle that you'll probably have is your polish, mainly because these pieces still feel very unfinished. And I don't know if he has a finished version. If he does, it'll be great to actually have that
Yeah,
uploaded.
because you can see the
Yeah.
bottom part is not, it's line art. While the top part is a little bit more polished, the bottom part of his work is kind of just lines.
In some cases, though, that might be okay, because some artists, they try to just draw focus specific part of a character in the concept. Maybe, the face is the most important, so they'll leave other details kind of like, unfinished. But you have so much detail here, so to not have everything, to not have it feel complete, feels like it's a service to the piece.
I feel also like they're a little bit cramped to each other, too. I would like to kind of see them a little bit.
Yeah, you could space them out a little bit more, too, yeah. And then you can also put a little bit of a shadow at the bottom, because right now they look like they're floating in midair. And then if you have and if you have like a gradient, you can do like a gradient going up too. So at least we know, there's like, well, he does have one here, so I guess that's all right. But then it's just kind of odd that
I think so. This one is the one that he put into like a semi background.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about the polished part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean you're putting it in a background, but the background's not polished, so
Yeah, it definitely becomes more distracting that way too. And then also in terms of lighting, like again, the top and the bottom. So when you're doing lighting, it's not just okay, you have like a core shadow on a character, but also you need to consider okay, overall as well. You also have a darker part at the bottom and lighter part at the top, and not just in the arm the shadow here, and then the leg has its own shadow, but everything put together also has to have its own like gradation too. And then highlight, you can probably have certain spots like the metal have very hot highlight where it's like much brighter,
right?
yeah. Than like you look at Ginger's nose right now, you might even see like a little bit of highlight, yeah, like red tip.
Oh, because it's like oily and there's light coming on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's also where like most of the source of the light is probably hitting up because that's closer to the light source, and it also indicates like the material of your skin, right, versus like the glasses versus like the hair and everything else.
That's true.
Yeah.
Let's look at another piece here first. Oh, this one's interesting. So we were talking about again the fonts. Oh, the fonts are really tiny.
Yeah. Well, so aside from the font, because that's a graphic design thing, that's something we can talk about later. But design-wise, I think it's interesting having a radial design where it's like it looks like it's a 360 thing where it's like every 1/4 piece it has something there. One thing you might also want to consider for environment design is also greebling. And greebling is what we call surface detail. And so when you look at a lot of sci-fi or or just architecture,
yeah, greebling.
I don't know if you
greebling
design.
Okay, greebling design.
Yeah, actually, you can just open it up. Yeah, there you go.
Image. Oh wow, what is this?
So when a lot of people design, right, especially as a starting off artist, they stick with very simple shapes, right? So it's like there's circles, there's spheres, there's triangles, there's squares, cubes. But on top of that, you can still break that even further down into other visually interesting pieces. And if you scroll down, if you see this part right here, yeah, that one. So over there, it's all cylinder, but even within the cylinders, you have
details,
like more details on there.
See.
Yeah. And if you look at other buildings and structures, like even like a brick, you still or like a wall at an apartment, you still have like bricks on it. Then you also have, like maybe something jutting out, like additional, like bigger brick pieces, just lining the corners. So it's things to like break up like larger surfaces, so it's not like so flat.
It's almost like when you're doing like sculpting, and then you're using kit bashing, where it's like you just take a lot of like things with a lot of little details and put them on top as well too.
Yeah, it's just now you're doing it, in 2D, so you can't really kit bash it. You could do 3D though. Like a lot of people, I've seen a lot of artists do dash together models in 3D and then re-import it.
Jules also says that for like fonts and stuff, she recommends this site called Blambot.
Oh yeah.
So they have free comic sites and everything, really typography and stuff.
Collect them all.
Collect them all. Yeah, thanks Jules for like letting us know about Blambot. Yeah, so definitely, I think we're looking at this. So basically, what you're saying is that the structure looks a bit plain. Like it doesn't have enough details.
Yeah, and even like some of these areas where you have the ramp, I mean, do they have stairs, right? Or are they a whole civilization that doesn't like stairs because maybe they're all like wheels for legs or something, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have steps then.
But they say it's a part gateway, part temple. It serves as a cultural. I think the other thing that I look for sometimes too is weathering. If it's like an older civilization, I'll probably want to see like more
moss and things
stuff.
breaking apart. even at the very top, where all the little four corners touch,
Mm.
maybe there's something right at the top, like a statue,
Mm.
that like overhangs. Maybe he's like the original founder or something,
Yeah.
something that gives it like more of a history.
Mm.
And then the dome at the top is interesting, right? Like
Yeah.
it could be something like from the Taj Mahal,
Mm.
or maybe something from like one of those Muslim countries,
Yeah.
Middle Eastern countries,
Yeah.
Northern Africa, maybe.
So I think one of
Yeah.
the things that my friend, who was like the lead surfacer at Blizzard, told me as well too is,
Mhm.
even though it's not a character, it still has its own story.
Yes.
You know, like even when you're talking about
Mhm.
like Iron Man and his suit and his
Mhm.
armor, where has it been? You know, like what kind of fight has it been in? Like, is it bashed on the side?
Yeah.
Is it stuff? And
Mhm.
even with the building a structure too, like how long has it been there? Because if you live in a new home, you come in, you move into a new house.
Oh, different feeling.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you come in like to a house that has been there for 30
Yeah.
years. It's not gonna look like the same.
Yeah, like the apartment we're in now. Whenever we come in, there's that like new house smell. But I'm sure you wouldn't have that if you walk into some like 1800, like log cabin. It'll probably be like musty.
Oh my god.
Probably like was a
Ugh, I
rotting
can
wood
smell
or
it,
something.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, like very something putrefying. Yeah.
Ew, gross.
Yeah, but yeah, that's definitely the case. It's like even environments have character. Like what makes it unique. You go to like Portland, or you go to Paris, or you go to someplace in like China, right? Like there's different things that makes it unique.
Yeah. What about
Yeah.
the structure of the perspective?
Perspective
I feel like
wise,
it's a little off, but that might just be me.
the back part is a bit odd. I don't know if it's supposed to be even all the way around, because the back looks straight,
Mhm.
the front is curved. So if it's supposed to be different at the back, then I guess that's okay. But then, if it's sharp,
I guess
when,
it's a
when
bit hard because it's
yeah.
not an environment too.
yeah,
I don't have a point of reference.
it would
for
help to
this.
have turnarounds of that environment.
Mm.
And then at the same time, if some of these areas in the back, maybe you can have an extra line to indicate the fact that there's another plane,
Mm.
unless that back piece is like a rounded object. Yeah, but then he'll need shadows to like
so
indicate
there's
that
this
too.
one. That
Yeah.
so they put it in environment.
Oh, there you go.
So this is
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that's even better.
Okay, so we see
Yeah.
the front is actually curved,
Mhm.
and then this is inside like So this especially, okay, so we can see that the environment is grassy, right? So there is no way that unless they clean it really, really well, that the sides of it will like not have some kind of moss, some kind of stuff on it too.
Well,
Unless it's a futuristic kind of.
couple things is that if you're doing this digitally, you need to organize your layers, because you have like grass on top of like pillars or like right in front of you. So unless it's like some multi-dimensional like
So we're talking
moss
about
or
this,
something,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
like, and even like the texture of like the building front kind of goes to there. So what you can do is you can separate like
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
yeah. So if you can separate like this building, yeah,
Yeah,
I guess I
yes.
could use that, yeah. If you can separate like this whole thing here into one layer, right here, like everything everything underneath that into one layer. Man, I'm not used to the sensitivity of this mouse. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this right here into like one whole piece. Then you can shove whatever else is underneath it, and this will still be popping on top. Even down here, you have lines over here. You got to erase those lines, or else they're going to show through underneath all the trees and stuff like that. Over here, if you squint your eyes and you look at the shading, this is like this over here, like this shadow and this shadow here is almost the same. But if you have a light source coming up, the shadow up here will be a little bit darker, and then and then when it reaches the bottom, you'll have a bit of reflected light, so it's lighter here. But then the cast shadow here will alternate. It'll be darker here again and get lighter as you go farther out. So that way you can separate the core shadow on the object versus the cast shadow too. So a lot of times when people think of shadow, it's like, oh, there's just one whole shadow, but that's not right. There's actually multiple like levels of shadow details and passes. Yeah, like even over here, you have like a core shadow here, but what happened to the shadow here, right? Like it's cutting off the shadow from this pillar here, so you'll have a cast shadow coming down here. And so part of doing traditional painting is understanding how light plays across multiple forms and how it would influence everything else here. In terms of composition, you can use your shadows for framing as well. Like over here, maybe this part right here is what we want to look at, because it's almost in your middle dominant third, and so that almost makes me feel like, okay, that's what I need to see. But you have these framing parts over it, which is fantastic. But lighting wise, like it's almost everywhere. Like I'm looking at that, I'm looking at that, I'm looking at that. Maybe have more of the light, and then you can knock everything else back a little bit, maybe even darken this, so that my eyes go straight into this.
What time
part
of the
right
day do you think this looks like?
I don't know. I mean, it could be like early morning to like maybe midday, but it's hard to tell because the colors are all like greenish. Maybe that's how the environment is.
Yeah. But that's also, I know that in animation, like sometimes we also have shadows, but our shadows are also actually sometimes complementary color.
which is fine.
the other one too. So
Yeah.
it's not always pure black as well. Too.
Oh,
Here, there's
yeah.
another study here.
Yeah. Well, on that,
What are we
shadows you should avoid using black for shadows if possible because it muddies up your colors. Browns I would also avoid too. You might want to try something that's like either like off purple or off blue.
I see.
And then also another thing is when you're doing lighting,
Mm.
whatever color your light source is, and if you have James Gurney's lighting book,
Yeah, right. James Gurney, like
Yeah.
book.
he actually says that if you have a warm color light, your shadows will be cool.
Mm.
But if you have a cool color light source, your shadows will be warm, and so it kind of flips.
I'm not really quite sure what we're looking at here.
Looks like different texture.
Oh, I think that's
different
raining.
lighting. Yeah, different weathers. Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem for me in this piece is we're trying to show it differently, but we're also seeing it still in grayscale.
Mhm.
And yeah, I understand like sometimes you show things in grayscale because like as graphic designers, before we do web design, sometimes we actually look at things in grayscale to make sure that the values work properly. But for me, I feel like some of these pieces, especially the one on the lower right, the value seems to be like the same throughout.
Well, one thing you can do is also push your value for your foreground background objects. Like the forward pillars, you could almost have that just all like just really really dark. So
Mhm.
that way, and have just a little sliver of light, kind of like a kicker light, and really push that contrast. Because then you can use that to make your background colors, just a little bit lighter.
Maybe
and
we can.
stagger it,
Maybe we can take one of these and draw it later.
we could try that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 Oh, this one looks
Mhm,
more.
mhm,
This one definitely looks more like what I would imagine for concept.
Yeah,
art.
this is definitely a lot
so-
nicer looking. Yeah, like perspective and stuff. Yeah, you have the contact shadow at the bottom too, which is good
Yeah.
too.
So they have this one
Yeah.
that says Golden Torque and Power
Yeah.
Sword with drawing for context regarding prop character scale.
Mhm.
Top 1 military dropship design for. Okay, now one thing that would make me a little bit confused is there's different props with different like stuff with a character, but the character is not the main focus. So the character is there for reference in terms of sizing and prop stuff. But also the other part of it is there is a pilot ship. There is a sword. There is a this. Does this mean that the whole thing is together or something?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if like the golden thing that they wear around the neck is that something to use to like control the ship, or is it just a decoration thing?
Yeah.
Because the bottom part feels more fantasy to me,
Mm.
and then the ship just feels out of the blue, where it's like
Mm.
sci-fi and something like super
Yeah.
like fantasy.
For me, the
looking.
ship,
Yeah.
if it has a little bit more element of also like more a little bit nature stuff on it too, might work.
Or they could tie it together by having like greens on the ship, right? Because you have that like really sick green glow at the bottom for the sword, and then you have those very
I really like that green glow on the bottom too.
Yeah.
Definitely, if that was on the spaceship.
yeah, or something that like a look that unifies all three of these together. Because suddenly in the middle, suddenly I'm like in Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
Where you have like some gem, in like a neck in like this neck thing.
Mm.
But in the ship above, that's like really high sci-fi, like or mechanical sci-fi. But the bottom is almost like I don't know, like Eldar or
Yeah.
something.
So
like
I would
that.
definitely say
Yeah.
it says character props Drusilla.
Mhm.
So where I'm on my assumption is that these are the props that related to this one character.
Mhm.
In terms of layout wise, I would
Mhm.
say that like if that's the way it is, then your character needs to kind of be represented more
Mhm.
because you're relating to her, and
Mhm.
I don't see her final design in this particular piece.
Well, another thing is, I also understand there's also things like Warhammer, right, where it's really just cluster. I don't want to say that word, but it's just a cluster of a lot of different designs, where you have like super high fantasy, like elves, and then you have like chaos troops, right?
Yeah.
Then you have like high sci-fi like Tau troops, and then you got like these weird organic like what's it I forget what they're called.
So-
But in this case, right, that ship, if you were to redesign that, maybe have it feature some of the more organic and type of elements that are also more elegant in shape
Yeah.
and not just as hard edged to kind of fit
Yeah.
in with the other elements.
I think
you
for
have
me
at
the main
bottom.
thing is also
Yeah.
the layout kind of threw me off because when I look at this, I was like, what is my focus? Like what am I trying to look at? And then it took me a moment to actually realize that these are all the props that belong to this character because, like I said,
It
number
feels
one,
like a whole other like
yeah,
3 different like IP almost.
yeah, different stuff
Mhm.
here.
Yeah. The silhouette's definitely interesting to look at.
But
Yeah.
for me, not sure what this is supposed to be as much. Like maybe how it works.
It looks like a sword, different ways it glows.
Yeah.
Maybe it grows, right? Like maybe it changes shape.
True.
Yeah, it could be one of those like magneto-reological.
Yeah. But for me,
something.
I would either refine this or remove it because I feel like right now we have a lot of stuff to look at, but we want to see the best work. You know, like I keep saying, your web stuff is like your real estate asset. You know, you have a living room. You're not putting all your furniture in your living room, just like how it matches.
Well, one way they could add on to that particular image, the one with the many blades, right, is they have the finished looking blade next to it too, so it shows you like all the different. It's almost like you're breaking down that one weapon too, and like all the different motions it goes through with the finished one.
Look at this one. Oh, that's pretty
nice.
nice.
Yeah, it's DNA.
Yeah, I like the use of white.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, like the highlighting is really nice on that.
Yeah. So now these are going to gesture drawings type of thing.
So can you open up one of the this one? Yeah, one of those. Yeah. So these are nice because you have a wide range of different gradients. So you have like really dark, some stuff that are almost black, and then places that are like white to like really push out the contrast. And then you look at their faces like almost like white compared to the background that are much darker. So this helps you figure differentiate between like shapes and use planar analysis to differentiate different elements. Yeah, and so for your environment pieces, I would like to see a lot more of that as well.
Yeah. So one of the things is now we're going to a different portion, a different style, and I also see that this is probably like a little bit more like studies.
Yeah, definitely studies. Colors are a bit grayed out too. You definitely can still push a contrast. Everything's still kind of like. So right now, like in terms of contrast, you have like light colors and dark values, but you probably still need to push that contrast a little bit more. Like if you save that and then you take it in Photoshop, you can actually use curves and like bump the contrast.
Where's your Casavari one?
Casavari, it should be at the
early works.
No. If you look outside, there's no there's Casavari sketch right there.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so this is the one that Jeff was doing in terms of like speed painting. Yeah. So speed painting is definitely one of the things that I see you do a lot for practicing doing stuff, right?
Yeah. Speed painting helps loosen up your muscles. It helps build muscle memory. It's almost like if you're doing martial arts, right? It's just like doing a punching bag. And you eventually figure out like short forms for like depicting textures and all that. Yeah.
Well, before we get into like a little bit about speed painting and like exercising your muscles for like drawing, like these kind of things. Okay, let's do a quick analysis of this. And like I said, also when I click on blog, there isn't actually anything.
Yeah.
So remove
that until you have content.
Oh, they have this one, I guess.
Hero.
Still can't see anything. Remove it completely. About. About is just okay. Contact. Sometimes I tell people contact and about can also be on the same page because they're basically the same thing. Like contact me, about me, if it's not too long. Portfolio wise, in terms of layout, I think this one too is this one's an.
It's like
what's this?
This is storyboard, maybe.
Yeah, I think this is a storyboard. Oh, so this is like their story. Yeah, animatic. We're not going to really take a look at this yet because right now we're talking about world building and previous. So right off the bat, one thing I would say is that your first thing I see is an animatic. But you also said that you want to go into previous character concept, so that should be your focus. Focusing is also very important because once I look at this, if I'm not going to hire you to do animatic or like storyboarding, then I want and you're sending in your work for previous stuff. I would like to see more of that in terms of figure. And also, I would like to see more polished work. Right now, I feel like these things there's a repetition of work. So with repetition of work, these I've also told you before, it's the same set thing.
Yeah.
Find a way to put these all in the same file, the same project, one page of something that you can show. You can even put this little animatic on the side as a side thing, but it should not be your main focus because, like I said, you're not trying to apply for that. And same thing. It's like when you see all these different structures, try to think about the way that it's kind of displayed. In terms of font, too small to maybe make them shorter and only just the main point. I like the way that this kind of stuff is displayed, like how Jeff does it, the research material type of thing. But if you could also see that on his, he doesn't show too many things as much.
I also don't put text on there because there won't be enough real estate for you to show off your artwork. Like those pieces on the side where you show all the different movements, like you can scale those up even bigger if you don't even have text.
Yeah, because what we're trying to look at is your art. a
Yeah.
concept as well too. Like if you have text, it should be supporting text, but it shouldn't be like overwhelming text where nobody's trying to like like find a narration. If they want to know more about it, they'll contact you about it. Same
Yeah.
with this too. Like how when we were talking about like display prop and character, that means like you have a more prominent character in their posing with their props at the side. Then you can show like some of the stuff too.
Oh, another thing I do want to mention is some of your rendering is also very soft. But when you like, I can't tell if there's like a hard object on him or if it's like something that's rounded. When you look at like the Mayan drawings, for example, it's a good mixture of like soft, rounded shapes with like very hard, edgy, squares and so on. So when you're able to so try working on depicting multiple forms, with the way you're rendering the shadows too.
Yeah.
And the highlight.
Yeah. Since William did say please tear it apart.
Yeah.
I would say that like at this particular level right now, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of polish level. Like for example, something like this, if you feel like your perspective and everything is not as accurate yet, I would suggest trying to use some 3D forms and like kind of like using that as a reference as well. There's like for me, like when I can't do something properly, I'll use 3D, put some light on, and kind of study how that light also works as well. Yeah. Definitely. Okay, so I think same other thing. Second thing is when you're putting additional work like gesture drawings and things like that, don't put it with your main work because your main work should be something that you're proud of, the best work. You could always make a little space here since you don't have a blog right now. For right now, you could always just say like sketches or things so that you can show that.
Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff that I don't show on my main portfolio. That's probably on my blog. So
yeah, sketches because I know that like on Jeff on his blog he sometimes shows.
I also write a lot more on my blog too. Like it's almost like
if they're interested in
cases.
if they're interested in like how you do things, you can always show like in process work. I'm a fan of process work. I like to know how people think, and I feel like that's a really good place for like blog for where you can see those kinds of stuff. Okay, so let's talk quickly about like we were talking about improving stuff. Like if you want to improve your anatomy, improve your lighting, and things like that, what should you be doing? And also when you're doing things like quick sketches, what are some tips? How do you sketch something quickly, and do you time yourself?
Yeah, for when I do my speed paint, it's usually either 45 minutes to 2 hours at most when I do these speed paints. And I mean, I highly recommend looking at just photographs. If you aren't able to go outside and do like real life drawings, like sometimes your subject are not going to sit there for 2 hours for you to draw. I used to go to zoos and aquariums and draw the animals there, and yeah, you get fast at that. But you don't have time to really sit there and study all the lighting and stuff because eventually they will close. So photographs is a good thing to look at. Study master painters, right? Like people like Albert Bierstadt. He was recommended by Noah Bradley in his videos. You can look at John Singer Sargent for human anatomy.
John what?
John Singer Sargent.
John Singer Sargent.
Sargent.
Like this? John Singer Sargent. I say okay. John Singer Sargent. I don't know. I thought.
Yeah, I think it's SAR, but
okay.
Yeah. And then you can look at, but for this case, I'm talking more about like more realistic lighting.
Yeah.
If you're doing environments, look at Monet for his time of day. Like his stuff is phenomenal because he sits at a church and draws like 4, 5, 8 times. Yeah.
I think definitely one of the things that I hear a lot too is that if you're going to be drawing something, try to get it from real life too, or like other parts like traditional artwork. Traditional art museums are a really good place to find that, not just from like anime or some animation, because a lot of these are already simplified down for you. So go out, like getting it from nature that's like your raw file, your HD file.
It is, but another thing is also you can get reference images because you're not going to keep going back to that place when you need to because that takes money and time. But yeah, like you can take the photos back with you and look at anytime you want. So sometimes I go to Reddit and they have this one subreddit called Earthporn. And it's basically people who go around to different parts of the world or around their area that have interesting landmarks, and they'll take pictures, put it up, and I steal that, and I use it for my speed paints, as practices. So, for example, this one over here with the island, I actually did this during lunchtime.
How long did it take?
So like an hour.
Oh my god! Okay.
Yeah, but the key to this is you want to work small, and when I use my brushes to paint, I only use basically default brushes for these. Other times, you might get some nifty concept art brushes. And I know people who have like a whole stack of concept art brushes. I probably don't even use like 15% of that. Yeah, like it's just finding the ones that are quick and efficient, gets the stuff done. Yeah.
So really quickly, when you started off with this one, when you're looking at this, what's the first thing that you draw?
the first thing I draw is the background. I get the lighting for the sky set up, so that way I have at least a teeth for my painting to go on top of. I notice a lot of issues with beginner painters is that they start drawing like the main subject and then they do the background. And what ends up happening is you're gonna have like areas that are unfinished around the subject. So it's better to do the background first if you're doing, at least when I'm doing this, finish the background, then you work your way to the foreground. And even if I'm doing like traditional painting, I'll probably sketch out something very lightly, and then like if I'm doing this for example with watercolor, I'll sketch it out. I'll still do the background because the blue is much lighter, and as you get down to the ground plane, the sky's going to turn lighter. So then later on, when I start on the actual subject matter, I can put darker colors on top, and it'll cover it all.
Okay, one thing that I really like about your stuff is the clouds. There's sometimes you're like, okay, clouds, you do it really quickly, and then you can get something nice. Can you do a cloud for me? A quick cloud. Let's see Jeff draw quick cloud, because I know that a lot of times people, clouds are something you draw in the sky all the time. So like, and I know that for me when I draw clouds,
it's not reading.
Is it not reading?
No.
Wait. Oh, here. Try again.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's reading. Okay. Let me move over. So Jeff is drawing a cloud demo. Because clouds are quick, right? How long do you use to draw a cloud usually?
Well, it's not just drawing a cloud, but it's also doing the background, because when you see the clouds, right, the clouds that I draw are on a darker background, and so there's a little bit of latency here.
Yeah, this is not a Cintiq, that's why.
Yeah.
It's a cheaper version. It's called an X Pen for anybody who has less money. This is actually working really well for me since I don't do a lot of like detail work that Jeff does. For me, I do more of this stuff. So let's see. So first thing is establishing the base of the sky.
Yeah. We're used to this particular one.
So yeah. I see you're using two colors already off the bat.
Yeah.
Like two slight.
Oh, I see what's going on. Like when I'm doing, I was actually on the background color. I guess I probably hit the wrong key or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and it's the Mac keyboard. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a Mac keyboard.
What's going on here? Okay. There we go. Yeah, but I'm using two different colors. Like the yellow is more towards the bottom, and oh my gosh, I can't paint with this thing. Okay, I might have to do a demo some other.
Okay.
Yeah. Crunchy brush.
Crunchy brush. What's a crunchy brush?
Crunchy brush is a brush with a lot of edge right here. So I use that to give a little bit of a teeth up here.
So you're copying the color from the back.
Yeah, but it's not sucking up the color. Like I'm pressing Alt, but it's taking so long to. Maybe it's because you're recording. Maybe
yeah, it is because I'm doing a couple of different things at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, that's not going to help at all. Then.
Okay, so you remove the crunchy brush because of the video latency.
Yeah, this is a bit hard to do. Is
do you want to use your own tablet?
No, the tablet's not going to help in this case. I don't know. Man.
Yeah, you might need to do a demo another time if that's the case. But can you do just a basic?
Maybe if I'm second.
So what color are you trying to take out?
I'm trying to take out the colors around it to cover it back up, but it's taking up like the dark blue color up here since there's such a big thing. See, I'm pulling out Alt, so it's not doing anything. So
switch that. Switch those two. Switch those two. Honey, click on this. No, this. Click on the little arrow. The little arrow to switch the color.
No, that's X. I'm pressing X.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, X switches between background and foreground. But the issue is just the it's not catching.
Okay.
I can't do this.
Okay, he can't do it. He quit. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe like we'll set up another demo another time for this kind of thing. Okay, so let's talk about like the other pieces of the live action stuff first, real quick. Okay, so what else did you want to show?
I mean, stuff like early works and all that.
Yeah, we can do. Yeah. Oh yeah, so one of the things that people keep thinking too is like oh you get good right off the bat, right? So that's definitely not true. So like from your early works, I think these are some of Jeff's earlier work. That's like you can see more of the anime style. And well, okay, if you could go back and talk to yourself in your younger age, now what would you correct?
I would definitely correct the posing, the composition, because this is like a vertical piece. I would do a horizontal piece. like the background itself should be a lot lighter. Perspective is like weirdly wonky. The comma itself, like the side that she's carrying is kind of odd. Lighting, like on her leg, there's like a really bright highlight there.
Bam. That's so good. Let's drop this piece in. Dead. Is there like, do you want to correct anything?
I don't want to touch it.
Okay.
I don't want to touch that. No.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So, early works. I think some of your other early work is also this one.
Yeah. Super early work. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see the evolution, you know, because these are almost like your base, but this is the same as when we were talking about the quality and polish, right?
Yeah.
So this one definitely like is not very polished right now at this stage.
Yeah, and also the design is just very simplistic, like the shapes and stuff. You know, it's not complex. You don't. There's also not really understanding of like why the shapes are there. It's just like, oh, I just want to break it up because it looks cool, right? But once you start thinking about like, okay, you know, on the little, like the lobster guy down here, you know, on his back, right? Like, why is there just like a little piece right down here? Why not like break that all the way through, and then, you know, maybe some like cross marks on top, you know, to show
to break it up.
Yeah, because when you're looking at
Greasy?
Greeble.
Yeah.
It's like that guy from Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
They got the
Greeble.
Yeah, he has like greebles all over his head,
Yeah.
like little bumps.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I guess the one thing I was more concerned about in this picture when I was drawing it before was just trying to like get all the action in, and then and still have like maybe a little focal point in the center of like these little guys
definitely
at the bottom.
focal point right now, because for me, what I feel like this one has a lot of is there's a lot of shapes that are pointing but nowhere, particularly in terms of focus. Like if you can see this spaceship goes this way, but then these ones are pointing downwards here, but and this is like pointing to maybe this focus, but then like basically like but in terms of eye travel, it's a little bit hard to follow in terms of focus. Yeah, but I know that, you know, like us as artists, we're very critical of what we do more than what other people do. So when we look back at stuff, there's a lot of times that like you don't really like your old works too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this one looks so semi-okay.
This is towards like my senior year at SCAD, and I was doing animation and sequential art as my double major. So I was actually doing 2 senior projects at once, which is like final project ever for your major, and yeah. But for this one, I was doing like a what do you call, like a samurai robot?
I still like how you do the silhouettes, because you know these are grayscale, but they still have details. Like if you look at the foot, and you can see that they're using different shades of stuff too. And it's great working off of just black and white, especially if you do silhouettes this way, because you're able to get larger shapes for your details. If you're doing just line drawings, things can get very messy because you start like noodling around. Whereas in this one, you're doing just graphic shapes, and it's easier to like see what's going on that way. Yeah. And this one is like a ghost type of thing?
Yeah, it's I think it's like some sort of kodomo. It's like a character who is like a anthropomorphized umbrella, and then he carries around a like a spirit lantern.
I think every once in a while we should always just, you know, I have a lot of my old work. It's at home in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And I go back and I look at it, I was like, oh my god, this is so funny. I thought that was my best work in a certain period of time. And then when I look back and I was like, oh man, okay, so this piece.
It's so just from the get go, like the just lighting is very, very soft. You know, nothing is hard edged on it. There's like no spectral highlights on it. All the shapes and stuff are kind of like doughy looking. Like the circles aren't really circles. It's almost like some weird potato shape. And then the cape itself on his back looks like some, I don't know, it looks like some plastic thing that's just like dangling up. And then the lens flare on his glasses, on his goggles, has to go because I can't tell, you know, what it looks like. Yeah. And then his like elbows are kind of like janky because like it looks like he broke his elbow like a certain amount of times. Yeah. And then like his knee pads, he has like really short dwarvish looking feet. So it's like there's a lot of, it's like when I threw a character on, I didn't consider like anatomy. I was just trying to draw like a cool vehicle, and then afterwards the character became like an afterthought.
Yeah. I think another one too that I like is like our friend Nick Palmer. He does a lot of like sketches and a lot of different stuff too. So one thing I do like was that when Nick and I were at Siege, he drew like he had a sketchbook full of
Mhm.
spaceships.
Mhm.
Like he just drew like 5, 6, 7 different spaceships, stuff like that, just like basic doodles.
Mhm.
But when he was drawing, he was telling me, "Oh, this is where the kitchen is. You know, this is inside of the spaceship because people's got to eat. This is a long
Yeah.
haul flight.
Mhm.
You know, like this is where the cargo stuff is." So
Yeah.
that actually determined the shape of the spaceship he was creating as well too.
Yep.
So I thought that was like a very interesting
Mhm.
kind of thing too.
That's definitely like a more industrial design concept art approach, and that's exactly what concept art should be doing. Now that you have mentioned that, a lot of people who get a concept just want to draw, and they want to draw like really pretty things, but you don't have the time for that because you're just creating ideas, and so you have more. You spend more time just researching and trying to come up with but as many ideas as possible. Um, um, but yeah, like you're not spending like 80 hours on like just one
Yeah,
illustration.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
research sometimes involved too because well, you know, like if your character is like in the desert and stuff
Mhm.
like that, it doesn't make sense. That's one of the things that sometimes I have a little bit of quip about it when it comes to game character design because I'll see all these characters like they're like oh I was like they don't look like they're really suited to where they're going, but I guess quote unquote cool.
Mm. Oh,
Just
are you
really
talking about like how women are portrayed in games, right?
well
Like the
sometimes
battle bikini.
yeah, but battle bikini. Oh
The
my god,
the less
come
armor you
on.
have, the higher your
Oh.
armor is, I guess. That's
Yeah,
how it
like
works.
seriously, that okay. Like question, okay? Like if I'm gonna go out and fight zombies, that's the one thing I have the most is like you see in movies where you see like girls and then they're wearing like short sleeve. I was like, no, like wear things
like
that
leather or
cover,
something to
cover your
yeah.
head. You're gonna get bitten by a zombie at the first moment you go out.
But let me ask you, are you
Okay.
magical? Because if you're magical, none of that matters at all.
I know, right?
Yeah.
If I'm the main character, it doesn't matter because I'm never gonna get bitten. You know, that's the logic right there, right? Yeah. Erica said there's also Noah Bradley.
Yeah, Noah Bradley. Yeah.
Yeah, Noah Bradley.
He does a lot of like Magic the Gathering illustrations and stuff. Actually, he was the one that mentioned Albert Bierstock, who I use for like my references.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice kind of stuff.
Mhm.
No, yeah, they have a really definitely like a fantastical look and posing.
Yeah, these
stuff
some of
like
his
that,
newer
too.
works. He's doing his own like IP now.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at this other one too. So you also don't just do sci-fi. You do other different styles first. I know this one was this is weird, but this one's for my thesis where Jeff did like a bunch of like food quick sketch drawing as well. So that's a different style. This is painterly, but this is like a totally different style and vectorized because like this is for paper cutting.
Yeah.
So that's a different style that Jeff can do too. So that doesn't show anything much. Let's see. Ingredient soup. Yeah. So these are actually herbs in Chinese herbs. Did you draw this or did you just take a picture and vectorize it?
Oh, I painted those.
Oh,
and
you
I
painted
vectorized
them.
it after, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. I thought you vectorized.
No, even the fish, I painted that and I vectorized it afterwards too.
Oh, so did you use any reference for the fish?
Of course, I looked at multiple things before painting it, just to make sure I had the lighting and the shape right. But then, I just painted straight up.
Okay, fish. And then what is? Oh, this is UX UI.
Yeah, so this is for a VR game made by Pulseworks, and so not really game, but it's more like a ride,
VR.
Entertainment ride, yeah. And they want me to create a UI that goes inside the cockpit for the ship that you'll be riding in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you know some Unity too. Oh no, Unreal as well.
Unreal Engine, yeah.
Yeah. So I think like how does that work to your advantage?
Well, part of it is that I could since I started doing more 3D, I could do proof of concepts with my work.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I design something in concepts, I could try doing a quick model in 3D, and I could like bring it into the engine and see how it might work, either in space or whether or not I need to or even if I'm using a character, I could like rig it like a very basic way just to make sure it's actually articulating properly and stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah. Let's see.
This one is.
Yeah, these are
the bigger images of the Dark Age ones that we were talking
more
about.
detail. Oh, and then like some basic matte painting.
So I noticed these ones have crisper lines. Is that like intentional?
Well, weird worm creatures. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and then if we go to the XS.
XS. Okay, let's look at XS.
Yeah.
What's this? Oh, these are these.
Xenoship,
Okay,
yeah.
so these are the like kind of like the compilations of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Pro said that he would be mind blown if you weren't using reference. Let me say one thing. A lot of people who go into concept and stuff, there's a lot of reference that are used as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's not cheating. Some people told me that, oh, I want to draw it straight from scratch, but it's like the more reference you use actually is usually better because you're also doing a lot of research on it as well.
And also, most of the time, you're probably not drawing from scratch, even if you do it through your head. Because now, I sometimes don't even use references for some of my sketches anymore, but it's because I got used to it. But that's because I saw a lot of films, and then maybe I've done this so many times, I already know what type of shapes are there that might be pleasing or works well together for certain type of designs. Yeah,
definitely. So this is also kind of like a breakdown of like I said, you really seem to like a lot of mechanical sci-fi kind of stuff too. Oh, so what about this kind of piece? These kind of props.
So those are all items for a card game called Xenoshift, where it's a tower defense game. You have aliens on one side, humans on the other, and you're trying to protect your base from being overrun by the enemies. And so you use these items to boost up your characters, heal them, basically keep them alive as long as possible to fight off the enemy. So.
Wow. Yeah. So when you're starting off something like this, how do you start off thinking of the concept? Do you do one piece at a time?
So I was actually working with, I guess you'd call him a director. He's a game designer, and so he already has an idea of what cards he needs, right? From all playtests. So medical would need 8 items, 12 items, or something. And then he'll give me an Excel sheet with all the item names, what they do, and then and then as a concept artist, I'll say, okay, this right here is a medical drone, and a medical drone, how do they get in and out? Do I do a usual sci-fi design of some dashed together abstract shape, or do I make it look like an actual representation of a creature or something? So the medical drone right now looks like insects, right? But then maybe later on when I do a gun drone, it'll be more like a traditional predator drone or something like that. And then when I do a chemical dispenser, maybe it looks like a caulking gun that you find at a hardware store.
So you also use some reference here, too, right?
Yeah, everything. I mean, everything I usually do, I have at least something in mind. Either found it or walk by it or something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
These are sketchies. Oh, yeah. So before you actually do final polish piece, right? These are your little sketchy stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't just go in and just paint.
Yeah, and as you can see, my final illustration tends to be maybe a little bit tighter. But then my sketches are just loose. It's chaotic. I just have fun with just shapes, throwing colors and splashes everywhere. And then after I have a good silhouette or composition, I'll start refining it down.
It's prototyping.
Exactly, yeah. And I like to do this thing where I have 6 or 7 images on a page. So that way when I'm done, I don't have to reopen something else. I just go on to the next one and repaint. Yeah.
Okay, too. So definitely these help with posing too. I can see different poses, the different perspective. Saves you time from doing a final piece, and then discovering that the posing doesn't really look that strong. Because I see a lot of times when people do digital painting, sometimes they'll go fresh in, and that's not bad, for normal time. But if you take your time and do little thumbnails first, sometimes it helps you come up with better posing, stronger pose, stronger character, stronger motivation. And I feel those sometimes work better than just I'm going to draw a character and the character's just like this.
Yeah, I mean you definitely do get some generic posing that way too. But even with these, I use the pipes as a way to draw your eyes around and stuff like that.
Yeah, thinking of how the eye flows around a composition is also another thing. Is okay, if an animation we talk a lot about tangents. When lines meet lines, then where are you looking at? Trying to make sure the directions are going where your eyes want to be focused through the use of not just objects that can be pointing. There's also blur, depth of field. There's also colors. There's also the use of tone and stuff as well too, to kind of play around with those.
I mean, you can always go back to the early elements of art, right? Yeah, line, shape, form.
Yeah, even on this piece, which is rough, you can see that there's a difference in gradation around the character. But you can see the brightest part is behind the character, and the character is a dark silhouette too. Because if this was the same tone all over, the character would not stand out as well too.
And that's definitely a trick that a lot of artists would use, is having that strong light source, and then they'll usually put it either behind or somewhere around to really highlight the foreground.
Definitely.
Object.
Yeah, Erica said, Albert
Bierstadt
was also mentioned too.
Yeah.
So these are also effects animation as well too. So you're also showing how things react.
Yeah, some of these I actually use layer styles in Photoshop. So I'll paint up the armor, for example. I'll take the original armor and then I'll do fill, fill 25%, and then put some sort of edge glow. And then a texture overlay on top.
So really quickly about this one, where we're looking at the gun drone, because just now we were looking at William's gun drone, spaceship, right? And we're looking at your spaceship. So there's a difference now between polish. So looking at this gun drone itself, there's the illumination of where the laser parts are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the kind of like I see some weathering on that as well too, as well as like there's like a difference in tonal shape and also like like for example, we were looking at William's piece just now. What would you encourage him to do?
Well, first off, I also want to mention there's also stuff called intentionality, right? Like this one here is because the style is supposed to be realistic. For him, his style might be more of a comic book style, and if that's what he's going for, that's okay too. But if he wants to step it up to like realistic concept, which if you want to do like Marvel and stuff like that, that's like where you probably want to get to, if you want to do that. And so you have to really get the materiality of the object correct. And I'm borrowing this from Feng Zhu. Where you have the right you have like the specular highlights. You get like the texture of the metal, looking a certain way. You have those hard, crisp edges if it needs it, right? Like if you're working with a metallic object. When you're working with shadows, you have areas with like with more shadows just to help bump out the contrast of the layer.
So it's like your
like
old artwork where it looked like gummy kind of.
It's very
dough.
soft.
Gummy
yeah,
dough.
yeah. It looks like Gumby Man.
Yeah, Gumby Man. So I think we're running out of time right now. But I think like is there any last thing you want to leave the people with in terms of like if they want to get into concept art and things like that, or just into how to make better like digital painting as well. I think that's the case because right now we're also talking about like details, and like lighting, like posing and stuff. Like what kind of stuff would you suggest they do?
Well, first off, if you are trying to do like more realistic painting, I mean, a big part of it is just of course, looking at what's already out there and understanding what software you have, at your disposal. But then another part is actually, going down and, in the nitty gritty, actually working on this stuff and, having people who could critique your work for you. And in some cases, it takes a long time. Like a lot of these work, these are over like course of like, I don't know, like I graduated from SCAD in 2012 and I've done all these since then, so that's like 7 years.
We looked at your old work too.
Yeah.
Like
and this is Albert Bierstadt. Like the left is his original painting, and then the right side is reproduction made that I did.
How long did you use on this?
Each one's about like 45 minutes to an hour.
Do you time yourself, or do you just like, oh, this is done?
I time myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that also like because like that way you can kind of like know not to do too much on it?
Yes. In this piece, for example, right, you look at the clouds and you look at some of the details at the ground, right, how they have, rocks and maybe some things at the bottom. You could, like, render that out forever. But at some point you have to say, okay, I don't have enough time. You gotta move on, finish the rest of the piece and stuff. And
so for someone who wants to do better in digital painting, 3 tips. What are 3 tips that you would give?
One of it is just really study, like how light and form plays with each other, the composition, etc. A lot of times people tend to make things very gray out because they only think there's only 2 or 3 colors, right? They're like, oh, there's just a gray, there's a black, and there's white. But like in a painting, everything here could have different variation of that gray or that black, and you need to like be able to separate that. The second thing is I would say study up as much as you can on just new techniques, experiment, look up new software. I didn't start off learning Unreal Engine, and I didn't start off doing all the 3D stuff that I'm doing now.
That was a collaboration.
Yeah, a lot of that I picked up from working with a lot of other people. Sometimes people have like more efficient ways of doing things that later on you can pick up too, and then you can try it yourself too. And then the last one, and then the third one is go out there and meet a lot more people because you never know who you'll meet who could actually give you that job you want. When I went to Siege, I went to a panel for Kickstarter, nothing to do with art at all, but just for Kickstarter I wanted to do my own stuff, and met a guy who's like, oh, we were looking for a graphic artist. I didn't do graphic arts at the time. I mean, the most I've ever done was maybe like a few logos here and there. But then they're like, oh, but we're looking for interns. So I went in as an intern to Cool Mini or Not, where I was at for the last 5 years. And from there, they eventually put me into concept art and stuff because they noticed I could do that. And from there, just keep stepping up. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because you don't want to stagnate ever.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, it's practice. Being patient is a very, very big thing. Because a lot of times when you're starting to get into details, the longer it takes to master something. And sometimes that mastery is so small that you're like, oh man, I took so long to like actually understand lighting, to actually understand form and shape and things like that as well too. And the other part of it is to like for me, it's like some people get very overwhelmed by just trying to make things perfect all the time.
I still do that sometimes too myself. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's why also like for me, I tell people like try to think of things as practice. You know, this project is a practice to the next project, the next project. Just like how you time yourself, you got to give yourself a limit and try to like otherwise you're just gonna be stuck. If you finish your piece, like I remember Professor Asapani, our animation teacher, was also saying that like you just gotta keep doing 1,000 drawing. By the time you do 1,000 drawing, you get better, and like stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I do want to add in a fourth thing, parting, and it is to actually enjoy what you're doing, because if you do not like doing art, I don't know why you're still here, because I'll be honest, like the money in art, right, isn't always going to be what you want it to be. But for me, I do it because I actually like it, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff I could be doing had I not, enjoyed what I'm doing right now.
But we should not accept the status quo and try to improve the industry.
No,
takeaway.
Not at all.
Yeah. So I think that's the main thing right now. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you.
And like if you have any questions, you can always message Jeff, on this forum or whatever, because he's here.
You can also email me or shoot me a message on Facebook.
Yeah, shoot him a message on what's your face. Oh yeah, his Facebook is on there already. It's on the group. So if you have any questions, you want to send him hey Jeff, I have a little question about this and that. Just do it. It's like That's the point. This is the reason we have all these ASIFA Facebook Live, is so that you can actually interact with other people and ask questions too. So take that opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Keep drawing, guys. Have fun.
Okay. Stop.